Hey there, have you ever wanted to play Half-Life as a Vortigaunt? No? What do you mean no? Well, you should, because this mod that released in 2005 is surprisingly one of the best Half-Life 1 mods I've ever played. It features some of the most interesting and also balanced gameplay, Valve quality level design, and a story that is partly set pre-Half-Life 1. So let me get right into summarizing, analyzing and reviewing this mod, Half-Life Point of View. Before we do that, consider subscribing. Thank you. The mod starts off with a cutscene showcasing the Zen factories as we know them from the largely unpopular Interloper chapter of Half-Life 1, while the introductory credits roll in a barely readable font. We play as a Vortigaunt, but not just any Vortigaunt. We play as a so-called super worker called Xongs, which we learn through journal entries that we get presented throughout the story. The first journal entry describes our background and how the Nihilith created us because of the Great Invasion, which describes the event in which humans managed to overcome natural order by using technology to invade Zen. As we move around the facility, we immediately get introduced to our main antagonist and objective of this mod. We see HEV suit-wearing scientists steal what we will come to find out to be the XTBS, an important piece of technology that the protagonist Vortigaunt has been working on as their personal project. The goal of this mod will be to retrieve this device, as otherwise the Nihilith will certainly punish us with death. Even the people who don't care for the story will follow it up to this moment, and I think it's greatly set up even without reading. If somebody tries making a mod set in the Half-Life universe, I generally dislike seeing cutscenes, and while I do think this mod would have been better off without them, I don't mind them as much in this case, which I think comes from a mix of the mod being so old and that it immediately starts with one. The goose chase begins quickly as we see the XTBS being transported away from a distance, in what I perceive to be a perfect showcase as to how stories can be told without cutscenes. We run across one ledge and see the story unfold on another. Now there is one more way of storytelling, which is direct info dumping in the form of text, which this mod certainly does make use of using the journal system. Thankfully you are free to just completely ignore this, but if you do enjoy what can essentially be boiled down to Half-Life fanfiction, there is a lot of great stuff in here. A lot of it tries to come up with backstories for certain systems, characters or events, which I did enjoy. I'm not gonna read it all out to you, but I will give you some info throughout if it's relevant to the story. For now, we will fight our way through Zen alongside Zen creatures against a bunch of HEV suit-wearing scientists, which provides a great point of view of the backstory to all those dead bodies we saw in the original Half-Life. To speak on the gameplay, we can't pick up any regular weapons or melees quite obviously. We are equipped with only our arms, which allow us to punch and to do the regular Vortigaunt attack we know and love. Managing to hit with this attack will also heal you for what I believe to be a random amount of health. And this basically summarizes 90% of your combat interactions. And honestly, this is insanely well balanced and surprisingly fun. By having your only weapon be a quick recharge long distance attack, it eliminates the risk of mishandled ammo management, which a ton of mods fall into. To anyone who has played more than a few Half-Life 1 mods, you will only be too familiar with situations where you have no ammo left on any weapon, have 5 HP and have a horde of enemies awaiting you in a hallway you have to pass through, which is another problem this attack fixes. You can essentially always heal yourself back up. So huge shout out to the creators of this mod. I expected it to get tiring, but this was honestly one of my favorite aspects of this mod. Another thing I loved is the enemy variety. While the first few encounters consist solely of HEV scientists, we quickly find blue HEV suit-wearing security guards, followed by what I can only assume to be a unique faction that fights for the G-Man. There may also be the Black Ops we mainly know from opposing force that are repurposed to serve as the G-Man's personal army here. We find the XTBS in the lab, after which the mercenaries of the G-Man steal it once more. The level design in these Zen lab sections really is impeccable by the way. This was a ton of fun to play. Fighting off most of these guys isn't too much of a challenge. I was playing on easy because I suck at Half-Life 1 combat, and I felt this to be a very fair, easy experience. The mod stays in Zen for a while. We drive a Zen train as we try to track down the XTBS and find the G-Man doing more deals with the black-suited mercenaries. And after finding our way through a mysterious lab, we make it back to the regular world, which the world we play as finally describes as a border world, which once more underlines the clear difference in the point of view of a Vort from that of a human. Also, if you're ever stuck on a puzzle, the journal sometimes includes some hints as to what to do next, which I find to be a brilliant idea to include hints that way. To get back to more of the gameplay, we do eventually find a few more weapons, the main one being the Hive Hand. This proved useful on a few occasions, mainly when facing off against heavy HECU soldiers. Yep, this cut enemy was brought back for this mod. It's one of my favorite cut enemies, so I really loved seeing it here. Aside from the Hive Hand, we also received the Snarks, which are awful as always. We also get Chum Toads, which are like Snarks. Yeah, and we get a completely unique weapon, Stuka Bats. You may have encountered these guys in the Trophy 02 or in certain Half-Life 1 mods. It's a cut enemy of which the model is still included in the retail game files. This mod takes a unique angle of turning them into weapons. They are like better targeting, higher HP Snarks. They do die rather quickly to gunfire however, thanks to their huge hitbox. I rarely found myself using these. but I love the creativity. There are a few highlights here. We for example get to control a machine gun. I mean, imagine what that must have looked like and what these HECU soldiers had to have been thinking in that moment. There is also one time where we become buddies with a Gargantua and have it help us against a tank. It's just kind of wholesome and definitely an insanely unique piece of gameplay for Half-Life 1. And it features some cool looking destruction too that is actually also gameplay relevant. Another incredible scene is this one. I stumbled into this environment and thought, this place is familiar. And once it hit me, the scene was already unfolding. We got to see Adrian Shepard crash. Incredible stuff. He's right over there. We then get a scene I'm not sure if I'm so fond of, in which we get captured in a Looney Tunes style trap set up by the G-Man himself seemingly. In general, the G-Man was a bit too involved in the story for my taste. Thankfully, this is the last time he's seen though as far as I'm aware. It is this scene that gets used however to do another crossover, which is one with another mod by the same maker, a mod called Azure Sheep. A mod I've also covered on my channel if you wanna check that out afterwards. We get locked up in a glass container for an unknown amount of time, to which we shortly wake up to a security guard walking up to our container and saying,
"End of the line for you."
This is the protagonist of Azure Sheep, and it turns out we are now seeing the point of view of this Vortigaunt in that mod. A pretty fun crossover. Journal entries in this mod are also used to explain certain systems that were first introduced in Azure Sheep. It tells the story of purple Vortigaunts. It also adds a backstory to Archers, the cut fish enemy of Half-Life 1 that was brought back in Azure Sheep and in this mod. There was a long section of what I believe was set out to be a segment similar to On a Rail, though I'm happy to report that you can totally just ignore the annoying tram to instead run along the tracks. We eventually get introduced to a new main antagonist, a military train wagon equipped with a bunch of machine guns. This enemy will follow us around, and we will follow it too. Our journal notes that we can sense the XDBS is inside of it. The eventual face-off against it is a super interestingly designed arena that takes us across multiple levels of height as we take it down using a crane in the end. The XDBS, as is to be expected, gets stolen again. It's also here that another enemy is brought back, the Sphere, and it's perhaps the worst choice I could have done. The Sphere is a cut enemy of Half-Life 1. It's a small Vortigaunt-like being inside a sphere, and this mod made its attacks basically identical to regular Vortigaunts. Now, do I have to explain why this enemy is awful for the attacks we have as the Vortigaunt? Probably not. Imagine if manhacks were only half the size, they had ranged attacks, and your only way of firing is a charge-up hit-scan shot. It's an awful combination, especially when this mod throws about 20 of them at you at once. By now I could have just as well been playing a Counter-Strike aim map. At least those balls don't fire back. There is another interesting and very sudden change in this mod, for which I have to explain some of the themes in this mod. This mod showed us the hurt caused by human interference. You had the Xenians living peacefully in their realm, to which humans came in and tore everything down that dared to stand in their way in the name of science. The G-Man was most certainly involved in all this too. And last but not least, another factor in this whole equation is of course the Nihilanth. The Nihilanth enslaved the Vortigaunts. It's questionable ethics all around. And this mod did a great job of showing another point of view of it. We clearly got to see how the humans are the opposite of good guys in this story, especially when it comes to the Great Invasion as Xenians called it. And fighting against one of the oppressors was fun in this case. Even scientists and construction workers had custom attacks added to which they inject us with poison and hit us with wrenches respectively. However, humans aren't the only oppressors in this case, as the Nihilanth is certainly also holding the Vortigaunts against their will, as the Vortigaunts confirm it themselves in later entries of the franchise. Even though the Nihilanth is a victim of the Combine's doings, it doesn't excuse what it's doing to the Vortigaunts. And so, at a random moment in the mod, we suddenly have a journal entry that for all intents and purposes basically goes, nah, f the Nihilanth. And afterwards we are an enemy of the Xenians. This happens without much warning, which had me quite surprised when I suddenly got attacked by other Xen creatures. Now it is to note that Vorts and other Xen creatures attacking us is not by their choice. The journal explains that the Nihilanth implemented a failsafe system that causes other Xen creatures to identify traitors as hostiles, no matter the species. Thus we now have the Black Mesa personnel, the Black Ops, the HECU and Xen wildlife fighting against us. Oh, and also rats. Overall, this switch up makes sense both thematically and gameplay wise. My only complaint would be that this is a very sudden switch up without much warning. Even the average journal reader is likely to miss this given that you don't receive any notifications for new entries. I would also have loved for there to be a clear specific event that causes the change of mind in songs, like seeing fellow Vortigaunts doing something that clearly goes against their will. Speaking of species fighting against us, there is one more to add to the list, as we fight a completely new boss battle I have not yet seen in a Half-Life mod. The boss battle in question being a fight against a construction robot thingies usually only seen out of bounds in the original Half-Lives. This time it's got a machine gun strapped to it and a grenade launcher. What an awesome idea for a boss fight. Love it. There's another interesting point to mention, which is that I feel this mod lasts for just the right amount of time. While more content always sounds better in theory, I do think mods should also come to an end if the story they crafted doesn't have any more grounds to stand on. Chasing the XTBS was fun, but you can only do it for so long before it becomes stale, and reading the journal entries will get tiring even to the most loving lore master. Thankfully, this mod did find its sweet spot if you ask me. It took me just about 2 hours to finish it. By the way, the journals are supposedly written down, which makes it very funny when you consider that the bot is actively typing things like shudders or deep telepathic inhalation. Bro's writing sound effects. Throughout all the journals, it's described that the collar we wear is what keeps us enslaved to the Nihilith, that the collar itself is actually alive, which makes the ending of the mod all the more great. Skip to this timestamp if you'd rather not have the ending spoiled. Our cutscene started shows Gordon Freeman swimming off at the dam. We arrive at the dam shortly after he left. A tank arrives, and just as we manage to shoot down the guy carrying the XTBS, the tank fires and seemingly kills us as our body gets flung into the water. The XTBS, however, seems to awake. We see it transform and then see the point of view of it flying into the tank and destroying it. It's also revealed that in the explosion, our collar got removed. We sink into the dam and eventually wash ashore in the same scene that is seen in Azure Sheep's finale. The Barney of that mod and his companion Kate find the vault and take it with them on their truck. As we leave, a bunch of seers come flying after us. But this is the end of their story as far as we know it. Anything afterwards is only assumptions. I like to think that Uriah of episode 2 is the same Vortigaunt as the one we play as here. Overall, this mod really kind of just checks all the boxes in terms of level design, gameplay, and its great invasion story that showcases a new point of view of the happenings of and pre-Half-Life 1. And I haven't even told you about every highlight of this mod. Thus, this is definitely one of my favorite Half-Life mods of all time. Definitely go and check it out. I'll link a tutorial on how to install Half-Life 1 mods in the description too. Don't forget to subscribe, and otherwise, thank you for watching.